fourth video, we're going to be working on the top of our lantern, this lid that you see here. We're going to actually focus on this umbrella part, and then the fifth video will be the dragons that you see next. So if you take a look at this, you can see that this is 6 sides to it again. So we're going to work on just that little pie wedge that we had earlier to make this. So let's switch back to our subtool that we had a second ago. And once again, if you haven't done so, probably a good time to save your file. And we want to just isolate our little pie wedge that we made earlier. Remember, that was the top of our cylinder. So right now it doesn't have any subdivisions, so we need to get this up to maybe around 60,000 polygons. So I'm going to expand, turn off my smooth mode, divide this, and I'm going to check this out, and I think we're in good shape. And also you can see right now I have a symmetry activated. This time my symmetry is not a radial symmetry, I just have a mirror on the y-axis. So first thing we want to do is make the umbrella type shape for this piece. So let's go to our deformation tool, and with offset set to Z, click on that. We can move this up a bit. And then now, using our gravity tool, we can make the edge of this kind of come down. Down here at the bottom you see gravity. Let's turn this to the Z-axis. And now you can see it's actually moving this piece up and down. So we have a nice little umbrella edge here. It's just not big enough. So let's use our size here. Only isolate it to the X and the Y-axis. Expand that out. Let's take a look at our base image. You can see that it comes out pretty far, and what we have right now, I think this is good enough. Well, the one thing that's not good enough though is we need to have this up a little bit higher. So let's use our offset to pull this up a little bit more so we get a really nice umbrella shape. And let's snap to this angle. We don't want to have any holes apparent through here, so let's go back to gravity and get a nice setting here. That looks good to me. We might see through it a little bit, but I'm not too worried. This might be coming down a little bit too much, but I'm okay with it. So now what I want to do is I'm just going to isolate only this top piece. I don't really want to see my other pieces in here. I'm going to start making some cool designs on this. If we go back to our see-through mode, you can see here we have kind of this interesting Tetris-like pattern going on. So let's just make something interesting. You guys can do whatever you want. Make a happy face if you want. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to keep my symmetry on with the, once again, the Y activated in the mirror. And I'm going to switch to our mask pen mode and just start masking out some sections. Also too, right here along the edge, let's keep that clear of anything because we want to put those dragons we saw earlier, and eventually we'll dynamesh that together, so you don't want holes on that side. So just kind of draw whatever you want here. I'm going to sort of do what I did in my piece previously. I'd recommend whatever you end up doing for this whole lantern. If you want to make something that would be a good production piece, stick with one type of style and go for the whole thing. So if you have this style here, you probably want to echo that through the rest of your design to keep it consistent. Make it feel like it all came from the same maker or style or time period. Alright, I'm going to sharpen these masks a bit, Control-Shift-Click, and I'm going to do Control-W to make a poly group, and I'm going to Control-Shift-Click this, click again so that we have this hidden right here. And now again, if you remember earlier, we're going to do Panel Loops, so come down here to Geometry. If you remember, we have to have the lower subdivision level deleted, and then under here, Edge Loop, expand that. The other thing we need to do real quick too is to delete the hidden geometry, so expand modify topology, delete hidden. Now we have only the part that you see in front of us. Expand the edge loop section. Panel loops, I'm going to turn this up to about 0.05 this time and turn my elevation back to 0. I'm going to change my bevel profile, reset. Let's give it a little bit of a curvy edge to it. And I'm going to turn my bevel down just a bit, and let's try this out. To me that looks pretty good. By the way, if you guys haven't played with it yet, I'm going to undo this. Check out this bevel size. If you turn this way down and now you run it, you'll see that the bevel's much tighter to the surface. If we have this way up, it gets bigger, and this can get you into some trouble in places like this where you don't have much room to work with, so watch out because you'll get some overlapping. That's why I'm going to turn it down a little bit, maybe to around 29, something like that. So we have a nice surface here. We have a little bit of deformation up top. I'm not too worried about this. If you want, you can kind of smooth that out real quick. In the end, we're going to Dynamesh all this together, so those little pieces that are a little bit unclean aren't going to affect us too much in the long run. Now, one other thing I want to show you, which is pretty cool, is press Shift F. You'll notice that whenever we run the panel loops, it actually makes us a new poly group, and this can be useful in cases like this. We're on the image here on our lantern. You can actually tell right along the edge I did a little bit of upraising, and just to kind of break it up more and give it a little bit more realism, like maybe it was extruded around the edges. So let me show you how to do that. Let's just isolate only this poly group, the new one that was made. And you can see it also has the same poly group for the edges here. That's fine. I'm just going to hide them by Control Shift. Control Shift Alt drag. You can see that's hiding that poly group now. The edge one, because I don't want to extrude that. And I had symmetry, so it just turned that other one out. And what I'm going to do real quick too is I'm just going to mask everything and then Control W so we get a new poly group. Okay, now you can see we have different poly groups on each side and just one for the center. So if you remember the transpose tools earlier, if you Control click a poly group, that'll isolate it. So I'm going to go Shift F to polyframe, Control click that, and now it's masked everything else out. So that's great. I'm going to do Shift F. You can see everything else is masked, and this piece is here. So what I'm going to do now, I think, is I'm going to thin out our mask just a bit. So I'm going to Control click that mask so it bleeds out just a bit, and then I'm going to Control Shift click again to sharpen. Now we have just a little bit more bleed room on the sides. And let's go down here to our deformation tool, and this time let's use the inflate. Inflate balloon was a little too strong, so I'm just going to use a regular inflate. And now you can see we can kind of give this like a little fake edge that's coming out. I'm going to go to our transpose tool. I'm going to click on this normal here because I like that. And I'm going to just pull this out a bit with our move mode with W. And let's just pull that out just a bit so it feels like it's actually extruded off the surface. Let's clear our mask, Control drag out here. And let's go ahead and do a Dynamesh on this, so we can clean up all that geometry. I'm going to collapse some of these, Dynamesh expand, and let's put it around 300 Dynamesh. It's a little sloppy, so I'm going to go a little bit heavier. 400, that ought to do it. Yeah, that looks good to me. And I'm going to do one quick relax underneath our deformation tool. So now this is super clean. So the next thing we need to do is duplicate this around. Let's show our base. So we're going to do the same thing we did with our lattices. Duplicate this 6 times. I'm just going to go to a brush mode. I'm going to Control Shift D to duplicate. You can see that we have a new subtool here now. And let's rotate that perfectly 60 degrees. So let's click the rotate button here. 60. And now we have a nice rotation, but you can see that we have a little bit of space in here. I'm not too worried about that, so I'm going to inflate tool this later once we Dynamesh them all together. And you'll see what it'll do. It'll close up the hole. So Control Shift D again to duplicate. Let's do another perfect rotation. at 60 degrees. And now we have 3 pieces. Instead of doing this 3 more times, I'm just going to merge these together, merge similar. So now we have this side done. Control-Shift-D to duplicate this 1 more time. And this time let's rotate it 180 degrees, which is half of 360. 180. Perfect. So now you can see we have the umbrella of our piece, the top lid, but we need to get everything connected together so it feels like one seamless object. So let's merge all those down, or at least just our lid pieces together. So now these are together. And real quick, I'm just going to close up these holes by using our inflate brush. B, I'm going to press I to isolate that tool. Inflate, here we go. And this time I think I'll turn on our radial symmetry so we can do this really quickly on our Z axis. Let's turn radial count down to 6. And now you can see we can kind of just close this up real quick. Got a little bit strong there and started to raise up, but that could kind of look cool. Maybe this is how it was manufactured, like it wasn't all welded together in one piece. So now let's go ahead and Dynamesh this again. I think our Dynamesh is still active, but just in case, let's run this down. Yes, it's still active. So Control drag on the outside, and that's going to run. Now everything's connected together, so we can come in now and just smooth this out so you can't even tell that this was connected before. You'd be surprised how much people actually do this in traditional metal casting. I used to do a lot of metal and jewelry and silversmithing, these kind of things, and you do this all the time and then connect things together if you don't cast it out of a single mold. So now we have this all together, and if you want, you could do the noise that we have here, but I recommend you wait until we have the dragons because we'll Dynamesh them together and get them all in one piece. But maybe what we can at least do for the time being is to give this some asymmetric damage on it. I'm going to isolate just this piece. And our symmetry mode is still activated. I'm going to come up here to our clay buildup tool, and I'll give it a little bit of symmetrical damage. It's fine with me, just to get a little bit more noise in here. And then maybe once again, like I'll turn this down to just a count of 3, so we can get some quick damage across the surface, but it doesn't go right onto its neighbor. Put this down a bit more so we can feel like we have some slashes through here, especially those rounded surfaces that hit the top a bit more. And then we can turn off the symmetry, and remember we had the planar cut tool earlier. This is a nice one that if I really scale this up, I can just cut that out like a big chunk happened to it, and then come in here with my clay buildup and dig into it a little bit more. It gets a little strange right here. Okay. Now we have a lid. Let's see what this looks like with a BPR render. And bring in our base. Alright, looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and stop this video and come back in a second, and we'll figure out how to do the dragon and finish this up.